According to a person with knowledge of the situation, the players' union proposal would allegedly result in projected losses of $460 million.
The speculation around who leaked this to Stephen Smith is almost as fascinating as the news itself. Was it Clark's agent, a Nike executive, or someone inside USA Basketball trying to get ahead of the inevitable? Whoever pulled the trigger knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't an accident. It was a strategic leak designed to lock in the narrative before any official press release, making the decision irreversible and ensuring Clark got her respect. That's the game behind the game, and it's just as ruthless as anything on the court. Clark's camp is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and they're undefeated in the PR war while the haters are staring at a winless record. This is modern sports reality. You win headlines to win leverage, and Clark has won both. She has the attention, the opportunity, and now the number. The trifecta is complete. All that's left is to play the games, and if history tells us anything, they're going to be must-see TV. Stephen A. will be watching, the world will be watching, and Caitlin Clark will be ready. The number 22 isn't just a jersey, it's destiny, delayed by politics but never denied by talent. If anything, the snub only amplified the moment, turning her into a symbol of redemption and arrival. The hero's journey is complete. She has returned with the prize, and that prize is the number 22 jersey of the United States of America. It doesn't get bigger than that. The debates are over. The era is confirmed. And what comes next is going to be spectacular. Someone eventually has to give, and that kind of language isn't normal bargaining, it's a battle cry. This is the reality of modern sports economics, where polished press releases are meaningless and the cash flow reveals everything. Today we're unpacking the core financial mistake that's ripping the WNBA down the middle, the quiet motivation driving the new unrivaled league, and why billionaire Mark Cuban suddenly inserted himself to highlight a hard truth that could either rescue women's pro basketball or burn it to the ground. To really grasp why the league is flirting with total collapse, you have to rewind to the spark that ignited this entire mess. Nafisa Collier, a 5-time All-Star, cornerstone of the Minnesota Lynx, and vice president of the WNBA Players Association, recently sat for an interview meant to promote a partnership with ICE.
Calling out the WNBA owners to a standoff for these CBA negotiations. She's basically saying, hey, somebody's gonna have to fold and it ain't gonna be us. This is the nasty red.
The figure being floated is a staggering $460 million in expected losses across the span of the deal, and no professional league can survive while hemorrhaging close to $500 million just to satisfy union demands. Ownership pushed back with a proposal that would have handed players more than 70% of combined league and team net value, meaning a share of actual profits, but that offer was flatly turned down. The reason is simple. The players don't want profit sharing because real profits in the WNBA are razor thin and, in some markets, basically non-existent. Instead, they are insisting on a cut of gross revenue, the raw top-line cash before arena rent is paid, before marketing costs are covered, before front office salaries are funded, and before the massive new expenses tied to charter flights even enter the equation. And that brings us to the unavoidable heart of this entire fight, the one question that explains everything. Why has total revenue suddenly exploded to the point that players are willing to gamble their own careers to grab a slice of it right now? The answer comes down to just 2 words.
Person with knowledge of the situation, the players' union proposal would allegedly result in projected losses of $460 million over the lifetime of that agreement for WNBA teams. And you remember, it was at a $700 million loss for the 30%.
Caitlin Clark. Before she injected her brand of economic shock therapy into the professional game, the WNBA was struggling to fill seats in half its markets, running promotions just to get people in the door. Then Clark arrived and everything changed overnight. Arenas sold out coast to coast. Networks tore up their programming schedules to slide WNBA games into premium primetime slots. Viewership spiked, merchandise flew off shelves, and for the first time in its 28-year history, the league experienced a true surge of mainstream attention and cash flow. That sudden influx of money is what the Players Association is now trying to lock in permanently. They are attempting to leverage what is essentially the Caitlin Clark stimulus package to secure long-term, multi-million-dollar guarantees for the entire player pool. And that's where the tension explodes. Because structurally, this is less about organic league-wide growth and more about one transcendent outlier distorting the revenue curve. It's the financial equivalent of a struggling local theater landing a one-night run with an A-list Hollywood megastar, selling out every seat for a month, and then having the entire staff, stagehands, understudies, ushers, and lighting crew demand a permanent 400% raise because ticket sales briefly went through the roof. The money is real, but the question haunting the owners is brutal and unavoidable. What happens when the anomaly isn't in the building every night? Yes, the pie is undeniably bigger, but ownership groups aren't run by fans or vibes. They're run by veteran businesspeople who've seen bubbles burst before. They're not willing to lock themselves into nearly $500 million in guaranteed losses based on a one-year economic spike driven by a single, generational outlier. From their perspective, that's not growth, that's volatility. They want proof of sustainability over 3 to 5 years before handing over the keys to the vault. And that's how we arrive at the deadlock. Players demanding money the league literally cannot pay without collapsing, and owners refusing to mortgage the future on what could be a temporary surge. So how do you fix a system this fundamentally misaligned? You don't tweak it around the edges. You bring in someone who understands how to rebuild broken sports economies from the ground up. Enter Mark Cuban. The former Mavericks owner took one look at the WNBA structure and immediately cut through the emotion. His core point was devastatingly simple. You cannot split revenue like a mature league when you don't have mature league margins. Cuban has said for years that the biggest mistake emerging leagues make is confusing attention with profitability. Exposure is not cash flow. Ratings are not operating income. And growth without cost control is how leagues die, not how they thrive. His argument wasn't anti-player, it was reality-based. You don't demand a bigger slice of the pie until the oven itself is profitable. Until then, you reinvest, you scale, and you protect the infrastructure. What Cuban exposed is the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. The WNBA isn't fighting over success yet, it's fighting over potential. And if they get this moment wrong, they won't just lose a season. They risk losing the entire league.
Trying to eat out of Caitlin Clark's pie. Let's be real here. Caitlin Clark served this dish up on a platter for you guys like it was Thanksgiving, and all y'all doing is messing up the food at this point. Y'all messing up the food.
Every elite college star is now forced to accept a financial step backward the moment they enter the WNBA, and that reality should scare everyone paying attention. The pro league is in the bizarre position of offering less money than the so-called amateur level. Cuban highlighted that top players at major college programs are already earning between roughly $500,000 and well over $1 million annually through nil opportunities. While still in school, their living expenses are covered, meals are provided, travel happens on private planes bankrolled by wealthy boosters, and they are treated like VIPs inside billion-dollar athletic departments. Then graduation hits, the draft comes, and reality crashes down. They join a league that lacks massive regional TV contracts, doesn't have NBA-level gate revenue, and operates on razor-thin margins. WNBA franchises simply do not generate enough operating income to hand out seven-figure salaries without burning cash at an unsustainable rate. No amount of public pressure or tough talk can manufacture money that doesn't exist. Yelling at ownership doesn't change balance sheets. But Cuban wasn't just diagnosing the illness. He was setting the stage for the uncomfortable solution that nobody wants to hear. He laid out a bold, industry-flipping fix that could break the deadlock immediately. Rather than draining the league by inflating paychecks straight from league income, the smarter move is to mirror the collegiate nil framework. Allow individual franchises to negotiate directly with powerful regional brands and arrange off-books compensation for athletes. In the NBA, a club can't tell a sponsor to quietly slide an extra few million to a star to dodge cap penalties. That's blatant cap manipulation and strictly forbidden under their labor rules. Cuban's point is that the WNBA should intentionally permit this structure. Legalize it, formalize it, and place limits tied to experience levels. Let outside corporate capital boost modest league salaries without touching ownership balance sheets. If a Midwest franchise wants higher player earnings, They should be able to partner with a major local tech firm or agricultural giant and have that company compensate the athlete through a sponsored agreement coordinated by the team. This shifts the entire financial load away from league operators while still delivering exactly what players are pushing for. Detractors argue this would tilt competition toward massive markets like New York or Los Angeles, where sponsor pools are deeper and richer. Cuban's rebuttal is simple and calculated. Implement revenue sharing to level the field.
Here he said, the crazy part is that no matter what the WNBA does with salaries, every star college player will take.
The league could mandate that a fixed share of all brand-driven nil revenue be funneled into a league-wide fund and then redistributed equally among every team. This is the same blueprint the NBA followed when jersey sponsorships were introduced. Once logos hit uniforms, executives quickly understood that a sponsor's true payoff wasn't just the hometown crowd in the building, but the national TV exposure, extended playoff visibility, and viral highlights that dominate social platforms. Because of that broader value, the revenue is shared. The WNBA could replicate this exact framework with individual athlete endorsements. Cuban's message to both sides is clear. Stop battling over a small, unstable revenue base and rewrite the system itself. Attract massive outside corporate capital and let those companies finance player earnings. Until the labor agreement is updated to permit this kind of bold, unconventional financial engineering, players and owners remain trapped in a destructive stalemate with time running out. The season is set to tip off on May 8th, yet before that happens the league faces enormous operational hurdles. Expansion drafts must be conducted for new teams in Toronto and Portland, a turbulent free agency window must be handled, and the 2026 WNBA draft still has to be staged. Absolutely, there's a strong argument that the players' union is overreaching here. The economic boom they're leveraging is almost entirely fueled by Caitlin Clark's unprecedented impact. She sold out arenas, drove ratings, and made the WNBA a must-watch product. Without her, the union wants a slice of wouldn't exist at anywhere near this scale, demanding 25 to 30% of gross revenue immediately, plus massive salaries and housing perks, is like asking a small business to hand out multi-million-dollar raises just because one star employee temporarily doubled sales. It ignores the underlying economics. The league still runs on tight margins and is historically subsidized. If owners accept without safeguards, they risk $460 million in losses over the life of the deal. That's catastrophic. The irony is brutal. By pushing too hard, the union could trigger a lockout, halting the very product that finally attracted a mainstream audience. Millions of new fans, especially those drawn in by Clark, could drift back to other sports, leaving everyone worse off. It's a textbook example of short-term greed threatening long-term sustainability. In other words, yes, they're being short-sighted. The smart path is to negotiate creative solutions like Cuban suggested, team-driven sponsorships, nil-style deals, and revenue sharing. That way, players get paid fairly without risking the entire league. And instead of sticking to the usual media script, she threw it out entirely and spoke in a way that changed the temperature of the entire negotiation. She stared straight through the headlines and challenged the billionaire owners to flinch first, making it clear that if anyone was going to cave, it wouldn't be the players. But to understand why that confidence is so unshakable, you have to examine her off-court leverage. Collier isn't just an athlete. She's a co-founder of Unrivaled, a newly launched, heavily backed 3-on-3 women's league built to keep players in the US while paying elite off-season salaries. And that's where the red flags start waving. A senior figure in a rival league now holds power inside the WNBA Players Association, effectively pressuring the WNBA while sitting on the other side of the chessboard. Analysts are already asking the uncomfortable question: is her goal actually reaching a deal, or is she betting on a lockout? Because if the 2026 WNBA season stalls or disappears, Unrivaled instantly becomes the main stage, soaking up media buzz, sponsor dollars, and players scrambling for income. It's cold, calculated, and undeniably smart, but for the WNBA's long-term survival, it's a live wire. And that brings us to the heart of the conflict, the union's demands that have owners talking about shutting everything down. The figures being pushed expose a massive gap between perceived value and financial reality. Earlier this week, the Players Association submitted its counteroffer to the league's February 7th proposal, demanding 25% of total league revenue in year one, with that share climbing to an average of around 27.5%. Across the full term of the deal, the demands don't stop there, because the union is also pushing for a salary ceiling approaching $9.5 million along with ongoing, heavily discounted housing benefits for younger players. On the surface, a 25% revenue share might sound modest if you follow leagues like the NBA or NFL, where players typically split basketball-related income right down the middle. But that comparison ignores the harsh financial truth of the WNBA. This is a league that, for most of its existence, has run deep in the red, surviving largely because of NBA support just to keep operations running. The players are looking at the recent surge in TV ratings, packed arenas, and booming merchandise sales and feel entitled to claim their share immediately. Back in December, their opening ask was 30%, and in their eyes, dropping to 25% represents a serious concession. Ownership, however, is staring at real expenses, real losses, and balance sheets that simply don't lie, and from their perspective the numbers point toward a financial cliff. So the real question becomes this: what actually happens if the owners agree to these terms?